We are inaugurating the fourth and the last day of this forum, which will unfortunately come to an end today. However, will continue in different formats and in different times in future. Our first speaker today is our Norwegian colleague, expert, Mrs. Hilde Haugsgjerd, was editor-in-chief of the largest, most important Norwegian newspaper, the Aftenposten, on the Norwegian press market, among those publications which write on political matters. This has been and is #1 newspaper. It's a daily. It is my pleasure to give her the floor, and thank you.
You are ready for a last long day of listening? That's good. My name is Hilde. My family name is too difficult to pronounce even for Norwegian, so just forget it. Call me Hilde. Until December last year, I was editor-in-chief in Norway, a newspaper and media house with about 1.5 million daily readers. Aftenposten is based in Oslo. Until 6 months ago, I was head of the Norwegian Press Complaints Committee, which I'm going to tell you more about in a while. Now I'm retired and run my own small business. In my younger days, as a journalist and later on a columnist, I covered Norwegian internal politics. I've never been a foreign correspondent in Moscow, for example. I appreciate being invited here. It has been of great interest to me to listen to some of the other experts and to listen to your comments and questions. And it pleases me very much to see so many women and a lot of young people among the participants. That's a good sight. I'll talk about 3 topics. First, I'll give you a very short background about Norway. Then I will tell you a little about how we practice the freedom of press in my country with some examples. And at least I give you an introduction to how Norwegian media works with press ethics and with some examples of ethical problems. I have recently experienced that it can be difficult for people from other countries to understand how freedom of press is practiced in Norway and how our free media works. It's easier to understand the Norwegian model if you are familiar with and have in mind what kind of society Norway is. This is how we like most of all to show Norway to tourists and visitors. It's Children's Parade in a sunny day in Oslo on our National Day, when we celebrate our constitution. But Norway, as your country, has most usual days, a lot of grey weather and a lot of rain from the north, coming from the North Sea. Norway is a small country with only 5 million inhabitants. Compared to most other countries, the level of socio-economic inequality is low. The differences between social groups are relatively small. Our constitution from 1840 was influenced by the French Revolution's values: liberty, equality, fraternity. There are many common values in the Norwegian political parties, different Norwegian political parties. To paraphrase a former deceased Norwegian Prime Minister from the Conservative Party, we are all social democrats. That's of course not true, but still it's not very far from the truth. Norwegian newspapers are independent with no ties to specific political parties. But of course, there are political differences among the newspapers. The constitutional provision, which my fellow Eivind Smith printed and gave you yesterday, is the foundation of freedom of the press in Norway and the foundation of the press ethic code. 10 years ago, the media and editors' independence was also statutory. According to this new law, the editor has full responsibility for the newspaper's content, and the law gives the editor protection against pressure from the newspaper's owner. But freedom of speech has limits. It is limited both by some laws, Norwegian laws, and of Norwegian media's own ethical rules. Most media are really stricter than what the laws allows. We have not obligation to print all what is allowed to utter. You do not publish everything about people's privacy. Hateful remarks and racist expressions are prohibited. Defamatory claims are prohibited. Very negative and distressing information about others must be traced, proved true. Some professionals, as doctors and health professionals, have a duty of confidentiality. But it is not forbidden for newspapers to publish information from someone who has broken its own statutory duty of confidentiality. I'll come back to some such examples. Norwegian editors and reporters put free speech allowed. I'll give you 3 examples of how press freedom is practiced. They all have to do with leaks. Leaks are often made by an organization's employees who happen to have access to information of great interest for the society, but who are not officially authorized to disclose it to the press. Aftenposten got some years ago access to the so-called Cablegate from WikiLeaks. We printed it and published it on the web, like some other European newspapers. It was information on international affairs from confidential reports from American diplomacy. The Norwegian foreign minister was desperate, and US authorities were furious. But as a Norwegian newspaper editor, I was not subjected to any reprimands. Then I have to add, we did not publish everything. We did not publish information we feared could threaten somebody's safety. We removed details and all names of sources from the material we published. But I had no qualms about publishing US diplomats' considerations about foreign policy and international security. Some Norwegian newsrooms were through leaks accesses to the report from 2 psychiatrists who had examined Anders Behring Breivik front lawsuit against him. Breivik is the man behind the terrorist attacks against Norwegian government headquarters and the Labour Party Young Camp at Utøya. This was confidential information. But some newsroom chose to publish the psychiatrist's report, among them Aftenposten. The big question before the trial was with decisive importance for what kind of judgment he would get, was whether he was mentally healthy or insane. The media leaks from the report led to a hot debate. The result was that 2 new psychiatrists were appointed by the court. They made a new report on the mass murder with the opposite conclusion of the first report. He was not insane and therefore punishable. The third example has to do with the Sami people, a minority group in northern Norway. Reindeer herd is Sami saved money. It is confidential in public documents how many reindeer a Sami has. A Sami may be offended if you ask how many reindeer he or she possesses. Despite this, the Norwegian National Broadcast Company, NRK, recently published information about how many reindeer some name-given Sami has. The reason was that there are too many reindeer grazing Finnmarkvidda, a huge area in the north of Norway. It is an ecological problem that vegetation is destroyed, and reindeer starve because of lack of food. This is a problem that concerns the Norwegian society as a whole. It was considered that to be more important than respecting the duty of secrecy and Sami culture. Norwegian politicians are trained and able to tolerate a lot of media attention. The small pig in the drawing have the face of the Norwegian Prime Minister. The drawing was a comment on a political situation short time before the election in which her party won the election and she became Prime Minister. The media investigate critical, even small things in the politicians' businesses if they run business. We write in the newspaper when a politician is caught using drugs. We publish stories when a leading member of a political party has been accused of having sex with a young party member. Norwegian media are organized in the Norwegian Press Association. This is an association consisting of the Journalist Union, the Editors Organization, and Media Owners Organization. We have acknowledged that it is a great strength in a number of important issues to have such an organized community between journalists, editors, and owners of the media. The Norwegian Press Complaint Committee is established by the Norwegian Press Association. Its objective is to supervising and furthering ethical and professional standard of the press. Its field of competence is all type of media. Its guidelines are the Code of Ethics decided by the Board of the Norwegian Press Association. Every Norwegian journalist has such one on his desk. And the editor have their own code about the right and the duty of the editors. An agreement between the editors' organization and the organization of the owners of the media. According to the editor's code, the editor assumes the personal and full responsibility for the content and have the freedom to shape the opinions of the media. PCC comprises 7 members appointed by the Norwegian Press Association for 2 years, but most are appointed for several periods. I was in the PCC for 10 years. 2 journalists recommended by the Union of Norwegian Journalists, 2 editors recommended by Norwegian Editors Associations, and 3 lay members, highly respected people in Norwegian society. No member are recommended by the media owners. The period I headed PCC, the 3 lay members were a philosopher, a professor of medical ethics, and a co-writer in an advertising agency. She had been the long-lasting girlfriend of Spain's crown prince, now the King of Spain, and had personally experienced ruthless methods by journalists and photographers. The PCC is independent of the state. The state provides no financial support. The Norwegian media don't want support to PCC, neither from the state nor from commercial sources. The 3 organizations pay the bill to PCC themselves. As a professional body, the PCC is part of Norwegian media. The press members are always in majority in PCC. The PCC is always led by either an editor or a journalist. Anyone can complain. But if you complain on behalf of any other, the persons concerned must approve the complaint. During my time in PCC, we dealt with complaints from the royal family, from police commissioners, from politicians, from large and from small companies, from public institutions, but most of all from ordinary people. The treatment is free of charge. The complaints procedure should be free, fast and fair. Complaints must be handwritten on 1 sheet. You can fill a simple form online, or a complaint can be a document of several hundred pages written by a lawyer. The Secretary General in Norwegian Press Association may take a case to the PCC on her own initiative. That does not happen very often. It typically applies issues of great significance for principal reasons or a new type of ethical issues. Also, in those cases, the person concerned must approve the complaint. When a complaint is treated in PCC, the outcome can be one of 3. The complaint is dismissed, the complaint is upheld, the editor and the editorial staff get a reprimand. This is the outcome if PCC found reason to criticize the newspaper, but not find the ethical rules are broken. When a complaint against a newspaper, a TV station or a radio channel is upheld, or the newsroom get a reprimand, they have to publish the full statement from PCC. This is such a page in a newspaper where you see the article, the big article, is the statement from PCC. Norwegian editors and journalists have good opportunities for guidance when they are facing ethical choices. The Code of Ethics is in a way the book of ethic laws. As in court systems, decisions in earlier cases in PCC give guidelines. Everybody can find these decisions online. Most major newsrooms also have their own code of conduct. And sometimes we have public ethic debates in relation to matters media covers. All educational institutions for journalist students learn about the main provisions of the Code of Ethics. Larger newsrooms have their own ethic teaching for new journalists and have regularly ethical discussions and ethical training. The Norwegian Code of Ethics has 4 chapters. First chapter, about the role of the press in the society. I quit that. The role of the press in the society. It states the obligations of a free and independent press. Chapter 2, about integrity and responsibility. It outlines the need for integrity and responsibility. Chapter 3, about relations with the sources. It details the relations to the sources, including their need for protection and necessity of checking sources and facts. Chapter 4, a lot of publication rules. It details instructions concerning where the press should be especially careful with what is published. As you know, ethics is not an exact science, nor the journalist's ethics. In cases the PCC deals with, this is from one of our meetings, different considerations are often in conflict with each other. Meetings of PCC have therefore a character of a small workshop where we openly reflect and discuss. Sometimes members shifting views on an issue during the meeting. We deliberate. It is not always obvious what is right and what is wrong. I'll give you a few examples of matters that PCC recently processed. The first chapter, I told you, is about the role of the press in society. Occasionally revolves complaints about whether a case is of public interest or whether the case belongs to the private sphere and should not have been discussed publicly. My first example was never any issue in the PCC. It is many years since it happened. The picture is of the Norwegian former Prime Minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland. The picture was taken when she announced to the Congress in Labour Party that she resigned as a party leader. Some months earlier, her son had committed suicide. All newsrooms knew it, but nobody wrote about it. Prime Minister's office asked us not to do. They told us it belonged to her privacy. Did we take the right choice? The Norwegian Prime Minister was in deep sorrow and was sick for a period. Would she be able to govern the country if a national crisis had occurred during these weeks? I believe the Norwegian media today would write about such a suicide. Consideration of modest privacy must yield to the public interest linked to a Prime Minister's ability to govern the country. The second chapter is about the editors and the journalist's integrity and responsibility. It is a very strong and unified tradition in Norway that reporters and editors may not hold positions of functional ties that may impair their credibility and independence. Most such complaints concern when newsrooms have had cooperation with advertisers and advertisers have influenced journalism. The lady in the picture is the editor of fashion magazine Elle's Norwegian edition. Her magazine was upheld. A complaint against her magazine was upheld because they had made a report about a spa treatment, you know about spa, which was funded by a company that produced such spa concept and spa equipments. The third chapter is about relation with the sources. The rule states, among other things, we shall be critical to the choice of sources and make sure the information is correct. Editor always decide editing and presentation, not the source or others. There are strict rules for use of hidden camera or microphones. It is only allowed if the matter is of great social importance and use of hidden microphone or camera is the only possible method to reveal the matter. It is not allowed to pay sources for information. Sources may request protection. If a source has been promised protection, this also applies if the police or the court tell the editor to indicate the source. The fourth chapter is about publication rules, as I told. The first and most important provision in this chapter says, make a point of fairness and thoughtfulness in contents and presentation. That means, among other things, show respect for privacy, ethnicity, and beliefs. Never draw attention to personal or private aspects if they are irrelevant. Take into account how reports on accidents and crime may affect on victims and families. Observe how media coverage of children can get implications for the child. Avoid presumption of guilt in crime and court reporting. Be careful with the use of name in criminal case. Make clear what factual information is and what is comment. Make sure that headlines, introductions and announcements not go beyond what is the evidence for in the story. The exposed to strong accusations shall have access to simultaneous refutation of factual information. The most frequent reason that complaints concerning to the Chapter 4 are upheld is lack of refutation. The possibility of refutation should be real. That means transparency of the charges and time to answer the charges. The man on the top photo and who's sitting by the wall listening to the PCC's meeting in the photo in the bottom is a very rich Norwegian financier who lives in Monaco. Norway's leading business paper had a big revelation about dubious financial transactions he had undertaken. He complained to PCC. part of his complaint was upheld, but only part of it. The reason was that he has not been told exactly what accuses the newspaper should write about him, and he had got very short time to respond to many complicated factors. The Norwegian royal family complained a report in a celebrity magazine. They had printed a big report about a vacation Crown family had on an island in the Caribbean. The photos were taken by a paparazzi photographer. The report was numerous pages long and showed the Crown Prince couple and their 3 children in a lot of private situations in swimming suits and bikinis. PCC believed that the Crown family could not keep the vacation in Caribbean secret, and the magazine was in its full right to make a report about the vacation. But part of the complaint was upheld, because the many pictures of the children, first and all, and the family life and private situations showed disrespect for privacy. My final example deals with identification in criminal cases. A young woman was found dead in a fjord. It turned out that she had been thrown or jumped off a bridge. A policeman who was a friend of the woman was charged with having thrown her off the bridge. A newspaper used the name of the policeman in an early stage of the investigation. The policeman complained the newspaper for the identification because he meant not that he was not guilty and because it was a burden for his children. The complaint was dismissed. Policemen administer laws and have the right to coercive measures. If he not would be sentenced for having thrown the woman off the bridge, we knew he had witnessed that she jumped to suicide without notifying anyone afterwards. And he had lied in police interrogations about what happened that night. PCC believed that it was justified to identify him. Considerations for his children could not weigh heaviest. One of you asked me yesterday if we in Norway have some tools in the effort to get the media to practice good press ethics. The answer is yes. I have told you about these tools now. They are the ethical rules all editors and journalists are committed on and is trained in. Our common organization, Norwegian Press Association, that works to promote high ethical standard. They arrange courses where journalists and editors are trained in ethic thinking and in ethic dilemmas. The decisions taken by the PCC, many editors, or all editors and many journalists watching what happens in PCC, and they can find the decisions online. And at least all the ethic debates which take place in newsrooms, among editors, and occasionally among the public. Periodically, usually when PCC has acquitted a medium in a case of great public attention, some politicians suggest PCC should be replaced with a system of appeal in state-run, in which media representatives would be a minority. But so far, no such proposals received strong support in Norway. It is widely believed that PCC works well for both the media and for the public. If you are interested, our rules cold words and photos are powerful weapons. Do not abuse them. You find them in this address at the web. Then you find they are translated to English and they are translated to Russian. So in the right corner you find the Russian flag, and when you pull on the Russian flag you find the Russian edition. So if you are interested, write down the address to the rules. Thank you.
Итак, коллеги, пожалуйста.
So, dear colleagues, it's time for Q&A. Let Ukraine begin. Milady, please. My name is Vera Andreyuk. I am from Kiev. Vera Andreyuk from Kiev. In Ukraine, as I worked as a brand manager of the largest NGO, that is the Students' Republic. And in my activity, I work with the media. We invite media to take part in our projects and then to cover what it was like. Sometimes I hear a response that, well, what that young men do is not very interesting for our people in the streets. They're much more interesting to listen to some scandals, politicians, or about the war right now. And is it interesting for your society to hear about what youth organizations are doing? And are you writing about it?
I'll be honest with you. Yes, we are writing about what such organizations, but not very much. But my newspaper is not writing a lot of what common people in the streets says or about celebrities. We write about the foreign affairs, about politics. But we have strong criteria for what is news. News is thing that is obvious news for people. They have never heard it before. Or news is news because a new situation make some well-known thing from some years ago important again. The non-governmental organizations, we write about what they do and what they mean if we think there is some news about it. Was that an answer to your question? It was difficult to hear the first sentence you told.
Да, спасибо.
Yes, thank you. We continue. Makhachkala, was it? Please, you have the floor. Good day, Shuvalova Yelena. I'm from Makhachkala. My question is it really in Norway that journalists are not murdered and killed? If the Russian medium, say, is in line with all the requirements and rules and comply with the rules that you stipulated, could it be that our work will be close to what you do, this impeccable activity that you do? Or maybe the problem about something else, that some other things need to be changed to ensure this safety for journalists?
Yes, that's a good question. No Norwegian journalist has been killed in Norway. One colleague of mine was killed in an attack in Kabul against Hotel Serena when he was traveling to report from the situation in Afghanistan. He died. But in Norway, no journalist has been killed. No journalist has been killed. Some get threats, but that's threats from criminals, not from terrorists, not from political enemies. And we take care of them. We discuss it. We go to the police when a journalist has been threatened, and some serious threats has been investigated. And some weeks ago, a young extreme Islamist in Norway who had sent some threats to 2 different Norwegian journalists were in court and was sentenced for some of the threats, but not all. Some of what he has told, the court thought that that was inside the limits for the freedom of speech. We, in Aftenposten, we printed the caricature of Muhammad. You know about the discussion some years ago? We didn't print it as a demonstration. We didn't print it on our front page. But we used some of the caricatures as an illustration to tell when the drawer in Jyllandsposten, the Danish newspaper, was attacked in his home. So we used it to show what is this case about. I was editor-in-chief in those days, and I got hundreds of threats, but they were not from Norway. They were from Pakistan, from Islamabad, some from London, some from Amsterdam. In Norway, up till these days, we have the Muslims, most of the Muslim society in Norway, they also have an understanding of freedom of speech, and they respected that we used the caricatures of Muhammad in the way we did. They didn't like it. They told me that I'm very sorry when I see this, but I respected our right to do it, and there were no threats from any Muslims in the Norwegian society.
Канал «Дождь», пожалуйста, Ксения.
TV chain Дождь, Ksenia. Ksenia Batanova from Moscow. Tell me, please, we, at least in Moscow, one of the big rows became tweet by journalists of the Echo of Moscow, not very polite or correct. Is it regulated, these private postings, what the journalists write in the social media? Because we've seen there are rules that apply for what is published in newspapers, but say if a journalist writes something on Facebook, on Twitter, is this regulated in any way? Are there any things that he can write or cannot write? Who is overseeing it, and are you overseeing it at all?
We have discussions about that topics these days, the last couple of years, because it's relatively new with the social media. And we have no very detailed rules. But we says that you have to act in social media in the same way, and in the newspapers you have to take care of your integrity and your independency. You must not write things on Twitter that afterwards people, when you read your byline in the newspaper, they think, oh God, I don't trust her because yesterday or in the night I saw something she read on Twitter, so I don't believe she is an independent journalist. But this is the general rule. More exact rules we haven't, and I don't think that is necessary. I don't think that will function because the social media is changing, the use of social media changing. So to give quite exact rules, I don't think it's possible. I think the best guidelines is to take care of your independency and your trust.
Юра Лобунов, пожалуйста.
Yura Lobunov, please. Lobunov Yuri from Bryansk. In my idea, the rights and duties always go together. When somebody or a group of people refuse to some freedoms and impose some limitations upon themselves, it means they should get some rights. You told us about these self-limiting rules for Norwegian journalists. I suppose if in my small town I would suggest to the journalist community to follow the rules you described, nobody would agree to that. They would ask, okay, we will put limitations upon this, but what do we get instead? As we impose these limitations and these rules, what rights shall we enjoy instead? What opportunities, what possibilities are open to you because of these self-imposed rules?
I think we have a great opportunity inside these limits. And first of all, I think when we follow this rule, then people trust the media. They have confidence to the media, they trust the media, and they know they have a way to complain if the media go over some limits they shouldn't go through. So I don't think it's a problem for us that this limit is too narrow, or is a... No, I don't think so. But my main answer is this is the reason, this is a tool to have trust among the audience, among the readers, among the seers and listeners.
Так, продолжаем. На эту сторону перехожу. Сударыня вот далеко, которая сидит, пожалуйста. Да.
Well, good day, Hilde. My name is Natalia Sevets-Yermolina. I live in Karelia. I'm member of the International Board of Barents Press International, and I visit your country often. 3 years ago, I visited Norway to cover municipal election in Tromsø, and I saw witness some funny things, which are really funny to us. We saw how you canvass people to. One party was handing out the red roses, wanting people to vote for them, and others were handing out carrots and cabbage, saying we're a poor party, poor people, please, we're not so rich, please enjoy yourselves. And we were telling them, look, there is something that we call black PR, there are leaks. Well, it's something boring that they have. Well, and a month ago I visited Tromsø again, and I met the mayor who was then elected as a result of that campaign, and his presentation inspired me greatly. His presentation was like a show, like a Nobel Prize winning speech. It was a mix of some very acute, relevant questions of humor, show, and I thought, oh my God, if our say 10% of our politicians enjoyed such charisma and whatever, what the birth rate of Russia would have shot up, and we would feel much happier. My question is about openness in press. In Karelia we have a special nomination, which we have every year, about the openness of press among politicians and public figures. Tell me, please, how open are politicians in Norway? How open they are for the press? And is there maybe some kind of trap here, or deceit? The more the politician is open, maybe the less journalist will be looking for truth himself. Well, I did not understand what is the link between charisma of politicians with growing birth rate in Russia.
As your description of the election campaign in Tromsø. You would experience the same if you had visited Bergen or Oslo or Kristiansand or other Norwegian cities. And I think that tells a lot about what I started, what sort of society Norwegian is. It's small differences between the political parties. And we have a high standard of living. And we have no... until Anders Behring Breivik, we have had no threats from terrorists or no dangerous questions in Norwegian society. So the politicians, they act often like, what shall I say, TV stars. They had advisors who tell them how to act on TV. It is the ones who are most clever to speak, to communicate with the voters and the audience who get the votes. No, I put it in, I'm not quite in that way. But I can understand very well that it was a funny thing to see. And then to your question, the political parties in Norway are quite open. All their congresses are open. We are listening to their debates. But of course, when the parties' committees are working in progress with the program, we are not we are not allowed to follow that discussions. But because Norway is such a small country, our parliament has 158 members. And it's open to political reporters. They go to the same restaurant and cafeteria. They go in the corridors and talk to the politicians. So when there are conflicts inside the parties and when there are difficulties in the parties, always somebody tells a journalist, because they have their own interest to give their version of what's going on, to give their story about what has happened. So we Norwegian journalists know almost everything what's going on in the Norwegian political parties. You can say it in a way a trade between the journalists and the politicians. The journalist needs to know what's going on, and the politicians, each after each, have their interest to give their version of what's going on. And that could be a long discussion about the effects of this, what shall I say, this mechanism.
Так, теперь на эту сторону.
Now this side. Milady, you do not speak often. Anna Dianova, Moscow. My question is, yesterday your Norwegian colleague was asked this question. In Russian media they often discuss when Russian children are taken away from Russian families in Norway. Could you comment to which extent this topic is covered by the mass media, and if it is, in what key?
You mean the story about these Russian children? Yes. Maybe the Norwegian newspapers in the north have been written about it. That is possible. But the national newspaper and the TV station has not covered these cases.
Все.
Well, that's about it. The lady was surprised by this very brief answer.
Ask me another question. I thought your question was if Norwegian newspapers had covered.
Позвольте, я просто поясню. Дело в том, что...
May I please explain what it is? Because in the Russian press, I may explain what it is all about. This story, or rather these stories, are blown out of all proportion, and there is so much talk about this, telling how social services in Nordic countries, Norwegian amongst them, and in Finland, is also very bad about this. So, in a horrible, beastly manner, they persecute families with Russian kids, and something out. Besides, we have a political figure who deals with the child's right. He also tells about these horrors wherever he can. And this is where we say this cognitive dissonance. How could this be our national trouble? In Norway, nobody is writing about it. The interpreter doesn't find anything funny about this.
The Norwegian national newspaper have not make a report about this individual case, these families, these mothers, these children. But the Norwegian main news program in NRK, Norwegian Broadcasting Company, had a reportage about a discussion in your country about these cases. So we knew about that this is a big question in your country, but we haven't covered the individual case in Norway. If I should add something to what Eivind Smith answered yesterday. The Norwegian barnevern, child care authorities, have very strong rules they have to act after. They are allowed to take a child from the family if the child is living in dangerous, if it's dangerous for the child to stay in the home, just then they can take it away for some days, only some days. If they shall live in a child home or go to another family with the child, then they have to go to a special court, a court led by a judge and consisting of psychologists, doctor, and specialists to take that sort of decisions. And if that special court decide that the children shall not back to the family, then the parents are allowed, can go to the higher court to have a new, to have the case new, and then he have their own lawyer who are talking their case. And also in the lower court they have their own lawyer who are talking their case. So the security that Norwegian law is followed is good in these cases. I think, as Eivind Smith told, maybe it's a question of culture. Our view is that children living in Norway, and that's Norwegian law, then shall have the same, what shall I say, protection as children born of Norwegian parents. If you live in Norway as a child, then you have the same protection as your neighbor who is born from Norwegian parents. And Norwegian law said, for example, it's forbidden to hit children. That is in the 1970s or 1960s, the law came that says it's forbidden to hit children, as an example. As a young journalist, I often covered this type of cases. And I had one experience. It's very, very, very difficult to cover as a journalist, because almost always you get the story from the mother, from the parents, and from their lawyer. But the authority, they have to keep the sentence. They don't tell you what's the real thing, what's real happened. So you get the one side of the story and not the other. And some circumstances is very difficult to see if you just talk with somebody for an hour or two. If a mother is mentally ill, for example, she can have a clean house, the children have a lot of food, it's well dressed, but it can have terrible conditions to live in for a child if the mother is mentally ill. So this is very difficult cases to cover for journalists, and I think it's difficult to deal with when it is between two cultures. But the security according to the law and to the rules are the same for Russian children living in Norway as for children born of Norwegian parents.
Please. In Ingushetia, question from you, Ahmed. So Republic of Ingushetia, Mrs. Hilde. So this institution of this commission, BCC commission that you spoke about. So, but before you get the final, before you got this institution, so there was kind of an interim institution, so you didn't get it in this final shape and form, because probably before it there were some interim temporary institutions before this final institution came. Because, and where is the so this how this institution BCC, how this BCC institution was set up, and as applied to Russia. If we import international model of this BCC, just import and try to place it in Russia. So it works very efficiently, very well in Norway. So if we blindly import it into Russia, for example, we are not sure that it will work, right? So it may not work. It may be cultural background is different. And the second follow-up question, what would you suggest? What kind of system of intermediate institutions would you suggest for Russia so that eventually we would come up to the same institution like BCC in your country? Okay?
We have had this institution from 1936 in Norway, so we have had it for nearly soon 80 years. And I think the big difference is the difference between a small and a large country. And the editors in Norway, they all meet the editor-in-chiefs in Norway, and a lot of the sub-editors in Norway, they meet twice a year to have discussion in the editors' organization. And a lot of them know each other. So it's very easy for us to have discussions about common culture and about ethic questions. And that is one main thing, so I see it's much harder for you, who are such a big country, with such long distances, and with much more, would I guess, disagreements in ethic and culture questions. If I should give you one advice, so I think it would be, you can start, or I know you have, but you can improve the ethic discussions and the ethic reflections inside the one newsroom, inside the one newspaper, and when you meet each other. It's not necessary to have this organization or to have this committee to grow ethic reflections among the editors and the journalists. And maybe this is an idea catch out of the air. Maybe you could do something like a more organized form of this in the locals among some newspapers. It's not necessarily be a national press complaint committee. Maybe you can make such one in Moscow, maybe in your part of the country, in your town, I don't know. But I think build stone brick to brick, increase discussions, set this type of topics on the agenda when you have meetings and conferences. Maybe make some local committees or local organization around the press ethic.
Farhad, пожалуйста.
Farhad, please. Gulyamov, Sochi. Could you said that this commission on complaints, this is an independent organization, right? And there are founders who finance. So what kind of organizations found and finance this independent organization? And then there are some editors, professional journalists work in this organization, and how this organization manages to be impartial, objective, and independent with all these founders and financing.
We have no founders. The three organizations of the press, the Journalists Union, the Editors Organization, and the Media Owners Organization is financing the Press Complaint Committee itself. The journalists pay a fee to be a member of the the Journalists Union. The editors pay a fee to be a member of the Editors Organization. And the owners pay a fee. Also the firm, the owners pay a fee to be a member of the media owners organization. And those three organizations pay for the Press Complaint Committee. So we have, the Press Complaint Committee has 1, 2, 3, 4 employees. The Secretary General, who also have some other things in her job, and 2.5 secretary who is preparing the meetings, preparing the cases, taking care of the correspondence with they who had complained, and the newsrooms and the editors. So that's the way we finance it, and that's the way we are able to be independent. And I can add one thing, when we have discussions and when we have different views inside the PCC, it never, the limits are never between the journalists and the editors and the representatives, the lay representatives. They always go on cross of the groups. It's more individual views and thoughts that decides how the different views divide the committee.
Так, Кристина, пожалуйста.
Кристина Боровкова, Тюмень.
In Russia, the state power, so then it gives too much importance, blows out of proportion World War II. And we decided to start this discussion. So because they are giving too much attention to World War II and the victory of Russia. And so this one, and in the media they started to discuss it. Are there in Norway some national symbols and events when for example, some people are against it, some people for it, and how they discuss these events of national importance? And because some in Russia, for example, some do not want just to bring back the results of World War II because they think it's forgotten, and others say that this is the most important event. So how do you go about discussing in the media so these controversial issues, symbols of the past of Norway, if there are any, how you discuss them in the media?
That's a good question. And now you ask a woman who was born some year after the World War II was finished. My father gave me a lot of books about World War II, and when I was a young girl and a young woman, I read a lot about World War II. But as a grown-up, and today, I agree with what I think is your opinion, that it has been too much attention to World War II. And it's just a couple of weeks ago, the last war hero in Norway got a celebration and a medal and a celebration. And it's just some years ago, it was the German ambassador took part in a university knitted up to World War II and was criticized, and was a big issue in the local community and in the media and the local community that he was allowed to take part in this celebration. But I think it's almost over now. It's not, and it's very seldom nowadays. Because the old people who took part and witnesses and lived at that time, they are almost dead, soon dead. And it's not a big matter in the Norwegian media anymore.
Ekaterina Vyatka. So in Norway is considered to be one of the best countries. So everything is fine because the level of well-being is high, living standards are fine, everything is great. How can we find materials? Because nothing happens. No one invaded Sweden, there are no public hostilities, so president is sane, your government is fine, so there is nothing is happening. What are you writing about?
A good question, a very good question. So I prepared. I was prepared to get that question. First of all, not everybody in Norway has a high standard of living. Most people, and almost all people, but some small groups have not a high standard of living. Immigrants, refugees who have recently come to Norway have a low standard of living. They're living under poor conditions. Some disabled persons, mental illness persons who have never been in work, so have got social security money all their life, has a low standard of living, have problems to live like their neighbors do. They have enough food, they are not in hunger, they have enough clothes, they are living in a warm flat, but are not able to go to vacation. They are not able to go to every birthday their children is invited to, for they have not enough money to buy birthday presents. So these questions the Norwegian media are writing about. But we are often, not very often, but sometimes criticized, especially from politicians, that we make small problems bigger than they are in Norway. For example, we bring from time to time, quite often, stories about sick persons who have to wait in a queue before they get surgery or medical treatment. And that in the political debate, some populist parties use it to show that it's bad conditions in the Norwegian health system, and that's because of our government and our this or that party. And but the truth is that when you draw the whole picture, the Norwegian health system is very good. It's very few and very small queues, and it's free of charge. Everybody who is sick in a serious way get all the treatments he needs. So the answer to you is one, some groups and some problems we have, absolutely. And we have, for example, now a big debate about how many refugees we should let come into Norway. And we have a lot of media debate and media covering about this. That's a very serious, important question, both for the thousands and thousands and millions of refugees in the world, and it's an important issue for Norwegian society, how many we shall take and how we shall treat them when they come. And two, what was lying under your question, it also has the result, the kind of Norwegian society, that the media makes small problems larger than they are.
Так, Кавказ, пожалуйста.
Caucasus, Chechnya. Caucasus, Chechnya. Progressive Life, Northern Caucasus, Chechen Republic. Mrs. Hilde, we in Russia, we love to discuss the freedom of speech, free expression. We love to debate that. So, but when we speak about when someone hurts other people's feelings, and when someone starts being very radical and saying bad things about other party, so then our media prefers to keep silent when someone is being accused. So where are the boundaries of the freedom of speech? When you can say anything about anyone and someone, you can hurt somebody's feelings. And as a member of Chechnya, I would like just to get the clear picture of for example, how our compatriots, the Chechens, live in Norway. So how they survive, how they live, what's their living standards, what are their capabilities, possibilities.
To answer to your question, your last sentences first. I don't know exactly and in a concrete concrete way how the refugees from Chechnya live in Norway. I have to answer you in a more general way. As I told before, when a refugee comes to Norway, they are housed in state-owned camps, which have usually been hotels before or schools before. They share room with another, with 2 or 3 other refugees, or maybe 4 other refugees. And if they are a family, the family got their own room, and they got all the food they need. They got warm clothes because it's a cold country in wintertime, and they got a small some money to buy cigarettes, to buy a book, some pocket money. This is the first step. If they are allowed to be, if they are allowed to settle in Norway, they got help from Norwegian communities, the government and the communities, to get a flat and to buy what is needed in a flat, kitchen equipments, living room equipments, and so on. So they got all the materials they need to start a new life in Norway. But the difference is when they want to go to work and be a usual citizens of Norway, then it often is difficult to find a work, because we accept people to speak Norwegian in almost fluent Norwegian, and it's a culture conflicts among some firms that are skeptical to people from faraway cultures and faraway countries. So the main problem for a lot of refugees who are being allowed to settle in Norway is to get a job and their own income, and what follow by that: respect for itself, new colleagues, social relationships, and so on. And then what you asked me for before you proposed that question, I forgot it. Your freedom of speech, and to talk and write about others with disrespect. I think that's a common opinion among editors, at least. It depends in what position you are in the society. If you are, what should I say, common people, usual human being who are not trained to take part in common debates, you are not being at the television, it is your first time in a debate, it's the first time any newspaper are writing about you, then we should take care. We should be not be tough. But if you have asked to be voted, to be elected as a member of the parliament, if you have said yes to sit in the government, if you are the leader and the owner of a big company, you have power over a lot of people's lives and daily life, then we are allowed to be tough to you and let the debate among these kind of people be tough. That's my opinion.
Вопрос Джона Ллойда, коллеги.
I enjoyed very much your talk. It was very interesting, especially in the British context. You will know that in the last 3 or 4 years there has been a scandal of the phone hacking, where reporters broke into the message system of celebrities and the royal family and so on. One question: how could you imagine that happening in Norway? In other words, that kind of criminal behavior for which people have gone to prison. Would that happen? And is there a division between, if you like, a morality, an ethical behavior on the part of the tabloids, Norwegian tabloids, which is different in practice, not in theory but in practice, from what happens in the upmarket serious papers.
The answer to the first question is no, and to the last question is yes. And the reason for that is the Norwegian tabloids is of another kind than some of the British tabloids. I worked 14 years in a Norwegian tabloid, Dagbladet, as I started as a journalist. So I'm quite sure that today it could never happen in any Norwegian newsroom or newspaper what happened in your country. Because they are of another type, another culture. They act not in that way. And I will add, we have so small, it is a small, milieu? It's a small, it's a small, community of journalists and editors. We know each other. Yeah, we know each other. We meet several times a year, so that in a good way we have good influence on each other. If one editor or a group of journalists did such things, they would be frozen out, and they meet corrective. They could be possible to do it. They meet correctives at the whole time. But I shall not tell that we are cleaner than we are. I would guess that somebody has paid police sources some money once or twice. But this quiet criminal listening to telephone and so on and usually pay big sums of money, no.
Прошу, сударыня.
Мучкова Наташа.
Samara. So when I study the role of mass media in modern world, and your expert opinion concerning this issue as covering by the media the acts of terror. How do you cover the acts of terror? Because certainly we need to cover it somehow. So the acts of terror and the violence. So then the main mission of the media is just to expose these crimes and just tell everything about acts of terror, and just to be open and to provide information as soon as possible. But at the same time, when we cover the acts of terror, and so then there is a dilemma, there is the negative impact, because if we talk too much on TV or on other media, so some subjects and repeat these violent scenes and acts of terror containing violence and terror, then it's going to backfire. So they start to scare the society, frighten the society, and then this psychology of fear starts to reign in the society. And thus, the media, instead of the kind of a bullhorn of truth, so they become the siding up with the terrorists, because they help the terrorists to achieve their ends, to scare as much people as possible. And the media is on the side of the terrorism, because they help to put society in fear of terror. And many regulatory measures are needed.
Describe an important dilemma. And I have not any good, sharp answer to you, because it's a dilemma. Of course, we have to write about terrorist happenings or terrorist occasions. We couldn't close our eyes and let people believe that this doesn't happen. But you are quite right in another way, that the terrorists, one of their hopes and one of their what they want to happen is that we shall feel fear for them. You're right. So I have no good answer. It's difficult. Also, another reason, we are not very concrete, and we are not very detailed when we describe the results of the terror. We usually don't print pictures of dead bodies, for example. We don't describe in details what has happened and how people are hurt, but we write stories about terror attacks. Oh God, we do. It's not 100% relevant, but since it happened just some days ago, I could tell that we in Norway, in Oslo, it was a refugee who had taken an employee in a hotel as a gissel. Gissel, is that right? Gissel. Taken him, kept in with weapon, and asked for a lot of money to let him set free. And the police acted and had a big, what shall I say? They tried to discuss with the terrorists who had taken this man in and threatened him. And media knew about it. We knew that this was going on. It took some hours in one day last week. And we didn't write about it before the situation was over. And it was happily succeeded. The police succeeded. So the terrorist was arrested, and the poor man was set free. But we write about it afterwards, but not when the situation was going on.
Коллеги, к сожалению, завершилось время этой сессии, и я, прежде чем поблагодарить нашего эксперта, хотел бы обратить ваше внимание на то, что мы услышали весьма и весьма откровенный разговор о том, как живет сегодня Норвегия. У нас иногда есть такой соблазн думать, что проблема есть только у нас. Проблема есть повсюду на самом деле. И говорить или думать о том, что Норвегия ведет совершенно беспроблемное существование, нет никаких оснований. Вопрос заключается в том, каким образом общество подходит к решению тех или иных проблем. Я опять возвращаюсь к вот этой вот теме несчастных русских детей, которых забирают у родителей. Понимаете, есть некоторое непонимание, основанное на том, что, может быть, мы не совсем представляем, как работает правовая система в устоявшемся демократическом государстве. Нам кажется, что суд может принимать любые решения, которые ему нравятся, как ему захочется, или как его попросят те или иные власти. Но правовая система демократического государства работает несколько иначе. Мы берем стандарты нашей системы и примеряем их к норвежской ситуации. И, разумеется, впадаем в ужас от этого, потому что нам кажется, что там также можно действовать, как это можно делать у нас. Нет, нельзя. И почему нельзя? Вот по меньшей мере отчасти наша уважаемая эксперт нам сегодня об этом рассказала. Мы очень признательны присутствию норвежской экспертизы здесь. Мне кажется, это очень важно. Я прошу, коллеги, выразить признательность. Полчаса перерыв.